It started with a game. Not the fun kind. Not the kind you play with friends over drinks. This was a game I didn't even know I was playing until I had already lost. That night, the air was thick with music and laughter. We were at a mutual friend's party, one of those cozy gatherings where everyone knew each other or at least pretended they did. I had my arm around Lucinda, my girlfriend of 3 years. She was radiant as always, laughing at some joke that wasn't mine, her fingers tracing the rim of her wine glass absent-mindedly. I didn't think much of it when she leaned in to whisper to her best friend, Qley. I caught the tail end of a smirk, the flicker of a glance in my direction, and something inside me twitched, but I brushed it off. I was being paranoid. Then came the question that changed everything. Would you still love me if I told you I wasn't only yours? At first, I laughed, expecting her to crack a joke, but the way her eyes held mine, steady, unapologetic, made my stomach drop. What do you mean? I asked, my grip on my beer tightening. Lucinda tilted her head as if I had just asked the dumbest question in the world. I mean, I've been seeing someone else. I swear the party noise disappeared. Everything blurred except for her face. Those soft features. That perfect smile that suddenly felt razor sharp. Qley let out a giggle like this was some inside joke I hadn't been let in on. A few of my so-called friends shifted awkwardly, but no one looked as shocked as I felt. It got worse. Lucinda leaned back into the couch, stretching like she had just delivered some casual fun fact about herself. I needed a real man, she said, her lips curling into that same smirk. And, well, now I know what that feels like. Something inside me cracked. I looked around, expecting outrage, expecting someone to stand up for me, to tell her she was being cruel. But what I got instead? Silence. Or worse, nods of agreement. Qley was the first to speak up. You have to admit, though, you kind of had it coming. Had it coming? Another voice, Jordan, someone I had called a friend for years, muttered, yeah, I mean, she deserves to be happy. I stood up so fast the drink in my hand spilled onto the floor. Lucinda didn't even flinch. I felt my heartbeat in my ears, my mind scrambling to catch up with reality. So what? You just decided I wasn't enough and never thought to tell me? She sighed, exasperated, like I was the one being difficult. Oh, come on. Don't make a scene. It's not like I was going to marry you. The room spun. I wanted to say something, to lash out, to call her out for the heartless person she had just revealed herself to be. But standing there, surrounded by people who didn't seem to care, I realized something. I had already lost. Without another word, I reached for my keys. There was no point in arguing, no point in demanding answers from people who had already decided I wasn't worth the truth. Lucinda just laughed. A real, genuine, amused laugh. Wow, she chimed. You're really just going to leave? I met her gaze one last time, and something in me shut off. The love, the pain, the betrayal. It all collapsed into one singular, numb realization. I didn't know her. Maybe I never had. I smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach your eyes. Yeah, I said. I am. And I walked out. I didn't check my phone that night. I drove aimlessly, not ready to go home to a space that suddenly felt foreign. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my body felt disconnected from my mind. It wasn't until the next morning that I saw my phone lighting up on the nightstand. 32 missed calls. I exhaled. Whatever storm was waiting for me, it was only just beginning. I woke up feeling like I had been hit by a freight train. Not in a physical sense, there were no bruises, no injuries, but inside where the damage didn't show. The room was dim, the only light coming from my phone screen as it blinked to life, vibrating against the nightstand. 32 missed calls. More than I had ever seen in my life. I sat up slowly, running a hand down my face. The ache in my chest wasn't sharp. It was dull, suffocating, like a weight pressing against my ribs. I unlocked my phone, half expecting some kind of emergency, some logical explanation for why my phone had practically exploded overnight. But no, it was all her. Lucinda. Lucinda. 2:13 a.m. Hey, you're being dramatic. Call me. Lucinda. 2:30 a.m. Seriously? You just leave like a coward. Lucinda, 3:12 a.m. I need to talk to you. I didn't mean for you to react like this. Lucinda, 4 a.m. Fine. If you want to be immature, whatever. You're the one who lost something, not me. Lucinda, for 42 a.m. But like, can we talk? I scrolled down. It went on and on. Dozens of texts, missed calls, and it wasn't just from her. Qley, Jordan, even some people I barely spoke to at that party. The same people who sat there watching while she humiliated me. Jordan, 3 a.m. Man, you shouldn't have walked out like that. You made it awkward for everyone. Qley, 3:22 a.m. Lucinda is really upset. I think you should at least hear her out. I should hear her out? I gritted my teeth, my fingers tightening around my phone. These people who were supposed to be my friends, had watched her spit in my face and then had the audacity to tell me I was the problem. I tossed my phone onto the bed. My hands were shaking. I got up, moving on autopilot. I brushed my teeth, showered, changed into fresh clothes, but I still felt like I was walking through a dream or a nightmare. The entire 3 years I had spent with Lucinda replayed in my mind. The late nights, the laughter, the plans we made. All of it was gone in an instant, reduced to a smirk and a careless confession. And yet, she was the one reaching out. I paced the room, heart hammering. I had questions, of course I did. Was it just one guy? Was it more than that? How long had this been going on? But did any of it even matter? The real question was, why did she care so much now? She wasn't sorry. She had made that clear. So what did she want? As if on cue, my phone buzzed again. Another call. Another plea for me to engage, to give her what she wanted. I picked it up, stared at her name on the screen, and this time I didn't hesitate. I answered. Her voice was quiet. Hey! I didn't speak. Are you going to say anything? She asked, a hint of irritation slipping through. I let the silence stretch. God, don't be so dramatic, she sighed. You made me look bad last night. A laugh bubbled up in my chest. Cold, bitter. I made you look bad? She groaned. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. I was going to tell you eventually. Right? I said flatly. After you were done needing a real man, I guess. Lucinda scoffed. Don't twist my words. I rubbed my temple. Why are you even calling me? For the first time, she hesitated. Because, she said, her voice softer now, I don't want things to end like this. My grip on the phone tightened. There it was. She wanted control. She had expected me to get mad, to cause a scene, to fight for her, maybe even beg. But instead, I had walked out, left her sitting there with that smirk frozen on her face. She wasn't upset about losing me. She was upset about losing power over me. I took a deep breath. You ended this, Lucinda. Not me. You're so stubborn, she muttered. I didn't answer. She exhaled, the silence stretching. Then, in a tone so casual it made my stomach turn, she said, Well, since we're over, can I at least come get my stuff? I should have known. I closed my eyes, willing the anger down. Fine. I'll be over in an hour. And with that, she hung up. I stared at the phone, my thoughts a tangled mess. This wasn't over. Not yet. And I had a feeling she wasn't coming alone. An hour. That's what she said. That's how long I had before she showed up. I stood in the middle of the living room, my hands in my pockets, staring at everything that once felt familiar. The framed pictures on the shelves, most of them featured her smile. The throw blanket on the couch. She always stole it, even when I told her it was mine. The stupid scented candles she left burning even after falling asleep. Everything in this space still had her fingerprints on it, but she was no longer part of it. The realization was strange. My brain understood it, but my body still half expected her to walk out of the bathroom wrapped in a towel, teasing me about using all the hot water. But instead, she was on her way to pack up her things. I exhaled sharply. If I wanted to, I could have packed them for her, thrown everything into garbage bags and left them on the front porch. Maybe I should have. Maybe that would have saved me from the pit forming in my stomach. But I didn't. Instead, I walked over to the fridge and pulled out a beer. It wasn't even noon, but at that moment I didn't care. Then, right on cue, the doorbell rang. I took a long sip before setting the bottle down and walking over. My fingers hovered over the handle for a second longer than necessary before I pulled it open. There she was, Lucinda, standing on my porch in ripped jeans and a hoodie that wasn't hers. Probably his. And she wasn't alone. Qley stood beside her, arms crossed, wearing that same judgmental expression she always had when she felt superior. I should have expected it. Of course she wouldn't come alone. Lucinda was never the type to face things head-on, not without backup. "Hi," Lucinda said, like she hadn't detonated my entire world just hours ago. I didn't respond. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Are you going to let me in, or what?" I stepped aside, not because I wanted to, but because I refused to give her the satisfaction of thinking I was bitter. She walked in like she still lived here, her eyes scanning the place like she was making sure I hadn't touched her things. Qley followed, her heels clicking against the floor like an impatient metronome. I leaned against the doorway, watching as Lucinda grabbed a duffel bag from the coat closet. She started with the easy stuff: shoes, jackets, little knickknacks she had scattered around over the years. Then she walked past me, straight into the bedroom. I heard the drawers open, the rustling of clothes being shoved into bags. I could picture it perfectly, her hands moving fast, not because she was in a hurry, but because she wanted to make a statement. Qley was the one who broke the silence. "You really should talk to her, you know?" I turned my head, raising an eyebrow. "Oh yeah." She shifted her weight, eyeing me like a teacher about to scold a student. "You left in the middle of a conversation. That wasn't fair to her." I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "Not fair to her?" Qley crossed her arms. "Look, I know you're upset, but relationships are complicated. You can't expect—" "No," I interrupted, my voice calmer than I expected. "Relationships aren't complicated. They require effort, honesty, respect." She gave up on all of that. That was her choice. Qley rolled her eyes. "You're so dramatic." Dramatic. That word again. I stared at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, I saw her for what she was. Just another enabler, another person who would always take Lucinda's side, no matter what she did. I didn't owe Qley an explanation. I didn't owe Lucinda one either. I heard footsteps approaching, and moments later, Lucinda reappeared in the hallway, 2 stuffed duffel bags slung over her shoulders. "That's everything," she said, exhaling like she had just finished a workout. "Unless you have something of mine you're hiding." I didn't answer. She stared at me for a long moment, like she was waiting for something. A reaction, an argument, anything. But I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. Finally, she let out a small sigh and walked toward the door. And then, right before stepping out, she hesitated. For a second, just a brief second, I saw something flicker in her expression, something almost like uncertainty. But then she shook her head, forcing a smirk onto her lips. "Guess this is it, huh?" she mused. "You'll regret this, you know?" I tilted my head. "Regret what?" She smiled, but it wasn't the kind of smile that reached her eyes. "Letting me go." I didn't blink. "I already let you go the second you chose someone else." That was the moment her smirk faltered. For the first time, she didn't have the upper hand. She scoffed, shaking her head before stepping outside. Qley shot me one last glare before following. I waited until they reached the car before shutting the door. And then, as the silence settled, something unexpected happened. I smiled. Not because I was happy, not because I wasn't hurting, but because for the first time in a long time I felt free. What I didn't know was that this wasn't the end, because later that night, I received a message that changed everything. "Lucinda, 11:23 p.m. I made a mistake. I should have ignored it." That was the first thought that crossed my mind when I saw her name on my screen at 11:23 p.m. I was sitting in my dimly lit living room, the only sound being the low hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of the house settling. The place felt emptier than it had earlier, like now that her things were gone, the silence had more space to stretch out. And then my phone lit up. Lucinda, 11:23 p.m. I made a mistake. I stared at it, the words almost taunting me. A mistake. She had made plenty of mistakes, the biggest one being thinking I'd still care after what she did. I locked my phone, tossed it onto the couch, and leaned back, rubbing my temples. I wasn't going to answer. No way. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Then my phone buzzed again. Lucinda, 11:37 p.m. Can we talk? Please? It's important. I exhaled slowly, my fingers twitching against my knee. There was a time when a message like that from her would have sent me into a panic, when I would have immediately called, desperate to know what was wrong. Not anymore. But curiosity, that was a different beast. I grabbed my phone and, against my better judgment, typed out 2 simple words. Me. About what? The 3 little dots appeared instantly. Lucinda. Not over text. Can I come over? I let out a dry laugh. The audacity. I started typing, ready to tell her no, to tell her to lose my number. But then another message popped up before I could hit send. Lucinda, 11:39 p.m. Please. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't serious. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the screen. There was a shift in her tone. It wasn't playful or smug. It wasn't guilt-tripping or manipulative. It felt off. I shouldn't have cared, but I did. Me. 30 minutes. No more. As soon as I hit send, I regretted it. 25 minutes later, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Lucinda standing there, looking nothing like the confident woman who had smirked at me in front of all our so-called friends. Her hair was tied up in a messy bun, her hoodie zipped up to her neck. She wasn't wearing makeup, and there were dark circles under her eyes. For a split second, I felt something stir in my chest. Not sympathy, not concern, just recognition. This was the Lucinda I used to wake up next to after long nights, the version of her that was raw and real before everything got complicated. I pushed that thought away. You've got 25 minutes, I said, stepping aside. She walked in, glancing around like she expected something to be different, like she was looking for proof that I had moved on in the past 24 hours. Sit, I said, crossing my arms. What do you want? She hesitated but eventually sat down on the couch. She didn't look at me right away. Instead, she fiddled with the hem of her hoodie, inhaling sharply before finally meeting my gaze. I messed up, she admitted, her voice quieter than I had ever heard it. I didn't say anything. I just waited. Lucinda swallowed hard. I didn't think it would feel like this. Like what? She exhaled, running a hand down her face. Like losing something I actually cared about. I scoffed. You mean me? Her jaw tightened. I didn't expect you to just walk away. I tilted my head. And why is that? She bit her lip, hesitating. Because, yes, I thought you'd fight for me. I barked out a laugh. Fight for what, Lucinda? A woman who told me to my face that I wasn't enough? Who let our so-called friends humiliate me while she smirked? She flinched, and for the first time, I saw something in her expression I hadn't before. Regret. Real, unfiltered regret. I thought it would feel good, she admitted. I thought. She stopped, shaking her head. I frowned. You thought what? She inhaled shakily, staring at her hands. I thought I wanted something else. I thought I needed more. But after you left, after I saw the way you didn't react, it hit me. I clenched my jaw. And what exactly hit you? She looked up, her eyes glassy. That I never should have let you go. A long silence stretched between us. She was saying the words I had secretly wanted to hear, but now that they were here, spoken aloud, they didn't feel the way I thought they would. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel validation. I felt nothing. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. So what now? You want me to forgive you? Take you back? Lucinda looked down. Would you? I stared at her for a long moment. Then finally I spoke. No. Her breath hitched. She opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, but I held up a hand. I loved you, Lucinda, I said, my voice calm. I gave you everything, and you threw it away for what? A real man? She swallowed hard, looking away. That's what you wanted, right? I continued. Someone better than me. Someone who could give you more. She squeezed her eyes shut. I was wrong. Yeah, I said. You were. Silence. I could see it on her face. She hadn't expected this. She had expected me to crumble, to take her back, to give her another chance. But that part of me, the part that would have done anything for her, it died the second she let me walk away. Lucinda took a shaky breath. I don't know what to do now. I shrugged. That's not my problem anymore. She winced. I stood up, walking to the door and holding it open. Her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place. Maybe desperation, maybe grief. But I didn't care. Not anymore. You should go, I said simply. Lucinda stared at me for a long moment. Then finally she nodded. And just like that, she was gone. The door clicked shut behind her. And with it, I felt the last remnants of whatever we had evaporate into nothing. I stood there for a long time, my hand still on the doorknob, as if my body hadn't quite registered that it was over, that she was gone for real this time. No calls, no texts, no manipulations wrapped in pretty words, no excuses. Just silence. And yet, as I turned away from the door, something didn't sit right. She had come here expecting something. She had needed something from me. But it wasn't closure. It was something deeper, something she wasn't saying. And I had a bad feeling it wasn't the last time I'd hear from her. I grabbed my beer from the table, sinking into the couch as the weight of everything settled on me. The memories, the betrayals, the absurdity of how quickly things had unraveled. I should have felt relief. I should have felt free. Instead, I felt numb. It wasn't because I wanted her back. That part of me was long gone. It was because I had spent years of my life with someone who could discard me so easily, and now I was left questioning if any of it had been real. The love, the late-night conversations, the inside jokes, had it all been a lie? I ran a hand over my face, exhausted. I needed a distraction. So I did something I hadn't done since before Lucinda and I got together. I went out. The bar was loud, exactly what I needed. It was one of those hole-in-the-wall places that didn't ask questions. Dim lighting, old rock music playing through the speakers, the smell of spilled beer and cigarettes lingering in the air. I slid onto a bar stool and ordered a whiskey, letting the burn chase away whatever emotions were lingering in my chest. Drinking alone? A voice asked beside me. I turned my head, saw her. Not Lucinda. Someone else. She was tall, with wavy brown hair that fell over her shoulders, dark eyes that held something playful, something knowing. She had the kind of confidence that made you wonder if she already had your life figured out before you even opened your mouth. I gave a half smile. Not anymore, apparently. She smirked, resting her elbow on the bar. Rough night. You could say that. She motioned for the bartender. Well, let's fix that. I should have walked away. I should have taken more time, processed things properly. But in that moment, I just wanted to forget. Her name was Melanie, and she was exactly what I needed that night. She was easy to talk to, effortlessly charming, the kind of woman who could make you forget your own name if you let her. We spent hours talking, laughing, drinking. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't thinking. I wasn't replaying that moment in the party. I wasn't remembering the smirk on Lucinda's face, the way my so-called friends had sided with her. I was just living. And then, right when I thought the night had turned around, the past came knocking. Literally. I had just stepped outside the bar, Melanie beside me, when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, expecting some late-night text from Jordan or Qley trying to drag me back into their nonsense. But it wasn't them. It was Lucinda. And she wasn't texting. She was calling. I stared at the screen, my heartbeat suddenly loud in my ears. Melanie glanced over. X. I exhaled sharply. Yeah. She raised an eyebrow. You going to answer? I hesitated. Then, without another thought, I declined the call. I had moved on. I was done. Or so I thought. Not even 5 seconds later, my phone buzzed again. Another call. And then another. And another. Something wasn't right. Melanie must have seen the change in my expression because she touched my arm lightly. Hey, everything okay? I swallowed. I I don't know. I pressed accept. Lucinda, I said cautiously. For a moment, there was nothing. Then finally a sound. But it wasn't her usual annoyed sigh or some half-hearted attempt to guilt-trip me. It was breathing, shaky, uneven breathing. Then, I need you, she whispered. A cold chill ran down my spine. She sounded scared. For a moment I thought I misheard her. Lucinda had never sounded like this before, not once in the 3 years we were together. She was always in control, always the one pulling the strings. But now she sounded small. I need you, she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. The bar around me felt like it faded into the background. The music, the laughter, the warmth of Melanie's presence beside me. None of it registered anymore. I took a slow breath, gripping the phone tighter. What's going on? There was a pause. I could hear rustling, like she was moving. Then a sharp inhale. I can't explain right now, she said, her voice shaky. Can you come? Everything in me told me to say no, to walk away, let her deal with whatever this was on her own. But that feeling from earlier, the one that had been gnawing at me since she showed up at my apartment, it was back. Something wasn't right. I glanced at Melanie, who was watching me carefully. You okay? She asked softly. I hesitated, then sighed. I don't know. She studied me for a second before nodding. Go. I blinked. What? Melanie smirked, but there was something understanding in her expression. You're clearly not going to let this go until you find out what's going on. She shrugged. So go. I hesitated for half a second longer, then exhaled sharply and nodded. Text me when you figure it out, she added, her tone light, but I could tell she meant it. I gave her a small smile before turning away, phone still pressed to my ear. Where are you? I asked Lucinda. She exhaled shakily. My apartment. I'll be there in 15. And then, without another word, I hung up. I pulled up to her apartment complex, my headlights cutting through the dark. I wasn't sure what I expected. Maybe her standing outside, pacing. Maybe her, dramatic as always, trying to lure me into some conversation she had carefully crafted in her head. But when I got to her door and knocked, it swung open instantly. And the woman standing in front of me was not the Lucinda I knew. Her eyes were puffy, her hair a mess, and she was still wearing the hoodie she had on earlier. But it wasn't just that. It was the way she looked at me, like I was the only thing keeping her tethered to reality. I stepped inside without a word, closing the door behind me. She exhaled shakily and ran a hand through her hair. What's going on, Lucinda? I asked, my voice firm. She looked down, her fingers twitching against her sides. I waited, and then, finally, she whispered, I think I made a mistake. I sighed. We've been through this already. No, she said quickly, shaking her head. Not that. I mean, she let out a bitter laugh, wiping at her face. I mean everything. I frowned. Lucinda, I don't love him. My breath caught. She swallowed hard, looking at me with wide, desperate eyes. I thought I did. I thought. Her voice cracked. I thought he was better than you. Stronger, more exciting. But he's not. I clenched my jaw. I was stupid, she whispered, her hands trembling. I was so stupid. Something inside me twisted, but I kept my face blank. So what? Now that you've realized that, you think I'll just take you back? She flinched. No, she said quickly. That's not. She swallowed. That's not why I called you. I crossed my arms. Then why? She hesitated. And then, in a voice so quiet I almost didn't hear it, she said, I think he's dangerous. The air in the room changed. A slow, creeping tension wrapped around us like a suffocating fog. I stared at her. What? Lucinda licked her lips, shifting on her feet. I don't know. It's just little things. The way he talks, the way he watches me. She shivered. And earlier, when I told him I needed space, she cut herself off, inhaling sharply. I took a step closer. What did he do? She shook her head quickly. Nothing. Not really. But it's the way he looked at me. Like, her breath hitched. Like I belonged to him. A cold chill ran down my spine. I had never seen Lucinda scared. Not like this. She glanced up at me, her expression raw, vulnerable. I don't know what to do. I exhaled slowly. I should have walked away. I should have told her this was her mess to fix. But the problem was, I still knew her. I knew when she was lying, when she was exaggerating. And I knew, without a doubt, that this was real. So instead of turning away, I nodded. "You're not staying here tonight," I said. Her eyes widened slightly. "What?" I gestured toward the door. "Get whatever you need. You're coming with me." She hesitated. "Are you sure?" "No," I admitted. "But I don't trust him either." She swallowed hard, nodding quickly. Then, without another word, she turned and rushed toward her bedroom. I stood there, watching the hallway, my gut telling me that whatever this was, it wasn't over. Not by a long shot.